And immediately she made that revelation, she was struck by an unusual madness. From that day, Olufunke roamed the streets of the village, mad, telling everyone who cared to listen that she was the queen of the village. The people laughed at her, calling her the Mad Queen, and for years, the royal family did nothing about her madness. The revelation struck Femi like a physical blow. He stared at Fatumita, realizing that the woman who had been a mad stranger was his true mother. "But why?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Why did you do this?" King Tofa's face was etched with regret. "I thought I was securing the future of the kingdom, but in doing so, I destroyed the life of the woman I once loved and condemned my own child to a life of deceit." Fatumita's madness was not a result of any fault of hers, but of the cruel circumstances imposed upon her. As the king spoke, Femi's heart broke for both his parents. The image of Fatumita, once perceived as nothing more than a madwoman, was now a poignant symbol of lost love and shattered dreams. Femi could see the depth of her pain, the echoes of a past filled with grief and betrayal. Fatumita's gaze locked with Femi's, and she reached out a trembling hand. "Forgive me, my son," she pleaded, her voice choked with emotion. "I am so sorry for the suffering I have caused you. I never wanted to be parted from you." Femi's mind was a storm of conflicting emotions, rage, sadness, and a deep-seated empathy for the mother he had never known. The realization that he had been raised by the queen, who had also endured her own pain and loss, added another layer of complexity to his feelings. The weight of the king's betrayal and Fatumita's suffering was almost unbearable. Femi struggled to reconcile the loving father who had raised him with the man who had inflicted such a deep wound on his biological mother. As he looked at Fatumita, his heart was torn between the desire for justice and the need for reconciliation. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls echoing with the ghost of the past. Femi's resolve hardened as he faced his father and mother, knowing that their family, once fractured by deceit and betrayal, now stood on the precipice of a difficult but necessary healing. The throne room was draped in shadows, the dim light casting long, mournful silhouettes against the walls. King Tofa sat slumped on his ornate throne, his regal demeanor stripped away, leaving only a man broken by his own actions. Prince Femi stood before him, his face a mask of conflicted emotions as the weight of the king's confession pressed heavily on his heart. King Tofa's voice trembled as he continued, "The decision to keep Fatumita and our son a secret was driven by fear and desperation. I feared that exposing them would undermine my reign and the stability of the kingdom. But in doing so, I shattered lives, including my own." Femi's heart ached as he observed the depth of his father's remorse. The king's eyes, usually filled with authority, were now pools of deep regret. "I thought I was protecting you, securing your future," Tofa continued, "but I failed you both. I failed Fatumita and our son." Femi's fist clenched at his sides, a swirl of anger and sorrow roiling within him. He could scarcely believe that the man he had trusted and admired was capable of such betrayal. Yet, as he looked at Fatumita, her anguish was palpable, and he knew her suffering was a direct result of the king's decisions. A tense silence enveloped the room until Fatumita's voice broke through, raw and laden with pain. "Did you ever consider what it would mean to me?" she asked, her eyes flashing with a mixture of grief and defiance. "I lost my child, my sanity, and for what? A kingdom's stability." Tofa's face crumpled as he absorbed her words. "I was blind," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I didn't understand the true cost of my choices. I see now that my attempts to safeguard the kingdom were nothing compared to the human toll." The king's confession was not just a revelation, it was a cathartic moment of reckoning. The room seemed to close in on them, the weight of their shared history pressing down like an invisible hand. Femi's internal battle reached its peak as he confronted his father's remorse and Fatumita's raw pain. He turned his gaze to the tapestry hanging on the wall, which depicted the kingdom's proud history. The vibrant scenes of triumph and unity seemed a stark contrast to the fractured reality before him. The vision of his father, once a towering figure of strength, now appeared frail and vulnerable. Just when Femi began to find a semblance of understanding, another twist emerged. The palace guard burst into the throne room, their faces pale with news of an uprising in a distant part of the kingdom. "The people are restless," one of the guards announced. "There are rumors of corruption and betrayal." The news struck like lightning, adding another layer of complexity to the already tumultuous situation. King Tofa's face turned ashen as he realized that his personal failures might now threaten the kingdom's stability. Femi felt a surge of conflicting emotions. His anger toward his father was mingled with a profound sense of responsibility for the kingdom's welfare. The weight of his father's guilt and the emerging threat of unrest created a storm of uncertainty and urgency. In the midst of the turmoil, Femi made a decision. "We must address the kingdom's problems together," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "If we are to heal as a family and as a kingdom, we need to confront these challenges head-on. Only then can we hope to rebuild what has been broken." The kingdom of Olufunke was a landscape of turmoil, its usually vibrant streets now cloaked in a heavy, oppressive silence. News of Fatumita's true identity spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the kingdom with shocking speed. The once mad woman, whom many had mocked and dismissed, was now revealed as the biological mother of the prince and a victim of a royal secret. The villagers gathered in small clusters, their whispers creating a cacophony of disbelief and anger. "How could the king hide such a truth?" one villager demanded, his voice tinged with betrayal. "And why did they let Fatumita suffer like that?" Prince Femi and Fatumita, now back in the palace, felt the weight of the kingdom's scrutiny pressing down on them. As they walked through the streets, their every step was followed by curious, accusatory stares. The once familiar faces of the villagers now seemed distant, their expressions hardened by the revelations. The emotional toll was visible on Femi's face. He struggled to reconcile his feelings of betrayal with his duty to lead the kingdom through this crisis. Fatumita, though finally sane, was not immune to the sting of public scorn. Her attempts to walk among her people were met with whispers and judgment. It was clear that, despite her return to sanity, she was now an outcast in the very land she once belonged to. The king, too, faced a storm of criticism. The palace walls, usually a symbol of power and protection, now seemed frail and vulnerable. In the Great Hall, the Council of Elders convened in an emergency meeting, their discussions filled with tension and fear. "How can we trust the royal family after this?" one elder questioned. "What assurances can the king give that no more secrets lie hidden?" Femi was summoned to the meeting, and as he entered the chamber, he was met with a room full of stern faces. The elders' accusations were sharp, their disappointment palpable. "Your father's actions have endangered the kingdom's stability," one elder said. "What are you prepared to do to restore our faith?" The pressure on Femi intensified as he tried to address the concerns of the elders while also considering his mother's plight. He knew that the kingdom's trust needed to be rebuilt, and fast. But how could he address the accusations and heal the deep-seated wounds of his people? As the meeting ended, Femi stepped outside into the cool evening air, feeling the weight of both his father's mistakes and the kingdom's anger. A sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves, carrying with it a chill that seemed to echo the tension of the moment. But just as Femi prepared to face the daunting task ahead, a new twist emerged. A messenger arrived with alarming news from the outskirts of the kingdom. "There have been reports of a rebellion," the messenger announced breathlessly. "The people are rising against the monarchy, demanding justice for Fatumita and answers for the betrayal." The revelation sent shockwaves through Femi. The kingdom's troubles were escalating, and now the very stability of Olufunke was in jeopardy. Femi realized that not only did he need to rebuild trust within the palace, but he also had to quell the growing unrest threatening to engulf the entire kingdom. With the weight of his new responsibilities and the kingdom's future hanging in the balance, Femi prepared to confront the challenges ahead. The kingdom was on the brink of chaos, and every decision he made from this point on would determine the fate of Olumo and the legacy of his family. In the grand hall of the palace, where whispers of treachery and betrayal still lingered in the air, Fatumita prepared for a confrontation that would test her strength and her heart. The once mad woman now stood poised and resolute, her sanity restored but her spirit bruised. The heavy doors of the hall swung open, and a hush fell over the assembly of courtiers, nobles, and villagers who had gathered to witness this momentous occasion. King Tofa, his face etched with deep regret, sat at the head of the room, flanked by his council of elders. Femi stood beside him, his heart pounding with anxiety as he awaited the confrontation. The tension in the hall was palpable, the weight of the kingdom's gaze pressing down on both Fatumita and the king. Fatumita stepped forward, her gaze unwavering as she approached the throne. The flickering torchlight cast long shadows across the floor, amplifying the gravity of the moment. With each step, the air seemed to grow colder, and the murmurs of the crowd grew louder, a mix of anticipation and skepticism. When she finally stood before King Tofa, Fatumita's eyes met his with a piercing intensity. The king's face flushed with a mix of shame and hope as he awaited her words. Fatumita's voice, though steady, carried the weight of years of anguish. "I stand before you not as a vengeful spirit, but as a mother who has lost much. The pain you inflicted on me was immense, but I am here to offer forgiveness." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. The king, visibly moved, struggled to maintain his composure. "Fatumita, I am deeply sorry. I never intended for this suffering. I can't undo the past, but I beg for your forgiveness." Fatumita's gaze softened slightly, but her resolve remained firm. Forgiveness is not something easily given, nor is it a cure for the past. But for the sake of my son and for the future of this kingdom, I will try. Just as hope seemed to rise, a new twist emerged. A loud commotion erupted from outside the hall. The doors burst open, and a group of masked figures stormed in, their presence starkly contrasting the somber atmosphere. They shouted demands for justice, their voices echoing with frustration and anger. "The king must be held accountable," one of the masked figures declared. "We will not forgive so easily. The kingdom must pay for its betrayal." The sudden intrusion threw the room into chaos. Guards rushed to contain the situation, but the masked figures were determined and defiant. Femi stepped forward, trying to reason with the intruders, but their rage was palpable and their demands unyielding. Amidst the turmoil, Fatumita's composure began to waver. Her forgiveness, which had seemed like a beacon of hope, now faced the harsh reality of public dissent. As the conflict raged around her, Femi's heart ached with the realization that restoring peace in Olumo would be far more complicated than he had imagined. With the kingdom's fate hanging in the balance, Femi knew he had to act swiftly to quell the rebellion and prove that forgiveness and justice could coexist. As he turned to face the angry mob, Fatumita's voice broke through the clamor, offering a surprising yet poignant plea for calm and understanding. The hall's atmosphere crackled with tension as the kingdom's future seemed to teeter on the edge. Would Fatumita's forgiveness be enough to bridge the divide, or would the unrest engulf the kingdom in a storm of conflict and division? The answers lay in the actions and choices made in the hours that followed. The turmoil in the kingdom of Olumo had barely settled when a new threat emerged from the shadows. Late one evening, as the kingdom's royal guards patrolled the dimly lit streets, a series of coordinated attacks erupted across key strategic points. Smoke billowed from the marketplaces, and cries of alarm pierced the night air. The city was in chaos, and the people were gripped with fear. Prince Femi, reeling from the recent revelations and the ongoing unrest, found himself in the midst of a fresh crisis. As he rushed to the palace battlements, he encountered a familiar figure amidst the pandemonium, Kuti, a former confidant of the king who had been estranged for years. Kuti, now leading a faction of well-trained soldiers, had returned to Olufunke under mysterious circumstances. "Prince Femi," Kuti called out, his voice urgent as he navigated through the wreckage. "We must act swiftly. There's an insidious faction within the kingdom that seeks to exploit this chaos and seize control." Femi's heart raced with confusion and skepticism. Kuti's sudden reappearance, coupled with his unanticipated allegiance, left Femi wary. "Why should I trust you now, Kuti? You left us when we needed you most." Kuti's face was a mask of earnestness and desperation. "I left to gather support and strength for moments like this. My faction and I have been watching from afar, and we've seen the danger approaching. There are powerful figures in the kingdom who have been waiting for the right moment to strike." Just as Kuti finished speaking, a group of shadowy figures emerged from the palace gates, their faces obscured by cloaks. They moved with calculated precision, their intentions clear. They were the new faction's vanguard, looking to disrupt the kingdom's fragile stability. Femi and Kuti, despite their history, had no choice but to join forces. The prince and the former confidant rallied the palace guards and the loyal citizens to defend the kingdom. The battle that ensued was fierce and chaotic, with the very fate of Olufunke hanging in the balance. During the clash, a dramatic twist unfolded. Amidst the fray, Femi stumbled upon a hidden chamber within the palace, where he discovered secret documents revealing a deeper conspiracy, one that implicated not only the rogue faction but also some trusted members of the royal court. The betrayal was more extensive than Femi had imagined. As the fighting reached its peak, Kuti's knowledge and strategy proved invaluable. His once estranged faction fought bravely alongside the palace guards, turning the tide of the battle. Yet, with every victory came more questions. Who had orchestrated the conspiracy? Why had Kuti returned now? The night's events left Femi with more uncertainties than answers. The unexpected ally had saved the kingdom from immediate danger, but the deeper layers of deception and the hidden motives remained unresolved. Femi knew that, to restore true peace and stability, he would have to confront the unseen forces manipulating the kingdom's fate. The dust had barely settled from the recent skirmishes when Prince Femi, with Fatumita by his side, began piecing together the threads of the conspiracy threatening Olufunke. The revelation that a hidden faction was behind the chaos weighed heavily on them both. The night was thick with tension as Femi and Fatumita scoured the palace archives for any clues that could reveal the identity of their enemy. Their search led them to a concealed chamber beneath the palace, where they uncovered a collection of sealed letters and coded documents. As they pored over these ancient texts, the truth began to emerge. The leader of the faction was none other than Mr. Abraham, a noble with a long-standing claim to the throne and a deep-seated grudge against the royal family. Fatumita's eyes widened as she recognized one of the documents. "This symbol, it's from the House of Kofi. They were always a powerful rival family with ambitions of their own," she whispered. The connection was clear. Mr. Abraham had used the unrest surrounding Fatumita's past and the queen's death to gather support from those discontent with the current rule. As Femi and Fatumita deciphered more documents, a chilling pattern emerged. The faction's plans were meticulously designed to exploit the kingdom's vulnerabilities. They had infiltrated key positions within the royal court, gaining access to sensitive information and manipulating the political landscape to their advantage. The betrayal was more profound than they had anticipated. To make matters worse, they discovered that Mr. Abraham had forged secret alliances with external forces, promising them a stake in Olufunke's wealth and power. These alliances added another layer of danger, making it clear that their fight was not only against internal dissent but also against powerful outside enemies who had a vested interest in the kingdom's downfall. The revelation hit Femi like a bolt of lightning. His own trust had been betrayed by those closest to him, and the depth of the conspiracy was staggering. As they delved deeper, they found evidence that implicated some of the palace's trusted advisors, adding a sense of paranoia and urgency to their mission. Just as they were about to confront Mr. Abraham, a new twist emerged. One of the documents revealed that Mr. Abraham had an unexpected ally within the palace, a figure whose loyalty was supposed to be unwavering. The identity of this traitor remained a mystery, but their influence within the court threatened to undermine Femi's efforts. Femi and Fatumeta knew they had to act swiftly to prevent further damage. They began to formulate a plan to expose Mr. Abraham and his accomplices while grappling with the unsettling knowledge that their most trusted allies might not be as loyal as they had believed. As they prepared for their next move, the tension in Olufunke continued to rise. The kingdom was on the brink of collapse, and the stakes had never been higher. Every decision and action had to be precise, or the consequences could be catastrophic. The fight for the kingdom's future was about to reach a dramatic climax, and Femi was determined to uncover every hidden secret before it was too late. As Prince Femi and Fatumeta wrestled with the enormity of their predicament, they realized that to counter Mr. Abraham's faction and the external threats, they needed allies beyond their immediate circle. Desperation drove them to a perilous decision, forming an alliance with rival factions previously at odds with the royal family. This was no ordinary partnership, it was a high-stakes gamble with the fate of the kingdom hanging in the balance. The rival factions were led by influential leaders, each with their own agendas and grudges against the current regime. The first of these was Lady Kumi, the head of a once powerful noble house that had been ousted in a long-forgotten conflict. The second was Chief Ola, a formidable warlord whose clan had been wronged by King Tofa's policies. Both leaders harbored deep-seated animosity but shared a common interest in destabilizing the kingdom to reshape it according to their own visions. Meeting under the cover of darkness in a secluded forest glade, the uneasy alliance was forged. The atmosphere crackled with tension as each faction laid out their terms. Lady Kumi demanded a significant share of influence in the new order, while Chief Ola sought promises of lands and military power. Femi and Fatumeta negotiated with caution, understanding that this alliance, while necessary, was fraught with risks. The first sign of trouble came swiftly. During a covert strategy meeting, Femi overheard a conversation between two of Lady Kumi's advisors discussing a plot to betray the alliance and seize control for themselves. The realization that some of their new allies were double-crossing them sent a chill down Femi's spine. If the factions turned on each other, it could spell disaster for everyone involved. Compounding the tension, Fatumeta's trust in Femi was tested when she discovered that one of the rival faction leaders, Chief Ola, was a long-lost relative of her own family. The revelation was a double-edged sword. While it created a potential bond, it also stirred old wounds and complicated their already precarious situation. Fatumeta's loyalty was questioned, and Femi struggled to navigate the murky waters of personal and political alliances. As the day of reckoning approached, the stakes soared. The rival factions, now emboldened by their alliance, began mobilizing their forces for an assault on the royal palace. The kingdom was in a state of heightened alert, and whispers of betrayal and impending conflict spread like wildfire. Femi faced mounting pressure. His position as prince was increasingly fragile as the rival factions' influence grew stronger within the palace. His once clear mission to protect his family and kingdom was now overshadowed by the complexities of managing treacherous allies and battling internal discord. Just when Femi thought he had grasped the full extent of the danger, an unexpected twist emerged. A trusted member of his own court was discovered to be secretly supporting Mr. Abraham's faction. The betrayal was devastating, leading Femi to question who, if anyone, could be truly trusted. With the kingdom's future hanging by a thread, Femi and Fatumeta had to navigate a web of deception, shifting alliances, and personal loyalties. The dangerous alliance they had formed was their only hope, but the path to victory was fraught with peril and uncertainty. As the conflict escalated, Femi's courage and resolve were tested like never before, and the fate of Olufunke teetered on the brink of chaos. The kingdom of Olumo braced itself for the impending clash between the rival factions and the royal forces. Prince Femi and Fatumeta worked tirelessly, strategizing and fortifying their defenses. Every day brought new challenges, and every night, the weight of their responsibilities grew heavier. Amid the chaos, Femi found solace in the trust he had placed in his inner circle, believing that their loyalty was unwavering. However, the thin veneer of security shattered one fateful evening. Femi's trusted advisor, Chief Afideo, whom he had relied upon for crucial intelligence and guidance, was discovered in a clandestine meeting with Mr. Abraham's emissaries. The scene unfolded in the shadows of the palace, where Femi, having grown increasingly suspicious of the frequent, unexplained absences of Chief Afideo, decided to investigate. His heart raced as he peered through the crack of a hidden passageway, witnessing the exchange of secret documents and encrypted messages. The revelation hit Femi like a thunderbolt. Chief Afideo, a figure he had seen as a mentor and confidant, had been working as a double agent, feeding sensitive information to the rival faction. The betrayal was both a personal and strategic blow. Femi had always admired Afideo's sharp intellect and commitment, and the betrayal cut deeper because it came from someone he had considered a friend. In the hours following the discovery, Femi's world seemed to collapse. The news of the betrayal quickly spread through the palace, causing confusion and fear among the guards and advisors. Femi confronted Afideo in a tense and dramatic showdown. Afideo, cornered and desperate, tried to justify his actions with claims of personal grievances and political ambitions, but his explanations fell on deaf ears. Femi's fury and sense of betrayal were palpable as he ordered Afideo's immediate arrest. The fallout from Afideo's treachery was swift and devastating. The rival faction, now armed with crucial intelligence about the royal defenses, launched a surprise attack on the palace. The attack caught the royal forces off guard, and the palace's defenses faltered under the unexpected assault. Chaos erupted as the kingdom's soldiers scrambled to repel the invaders, and the palace's once secure walls were breached. Amid the confusion, Femi struggled to maintain control. The betrayer had not only compromised their military strategy but also created a deep fissure in the royal leadership. The trust that had once united the kingdom now seemed irrevocably fractured. Femi's resolve was tested as he faced the harsh reality of his failed judgment and the consequences of misplaced trust. As the battle raged on, Femi and Fatumeta fought valiantly to defend their kingdom. The intense conflict highlighted the fragile nature of alliances and the high stakes of their struggle. Femi's emotional turmoil and the harsh truth of betrayal added layers of complexity to the already dire situation, making every moment a battle not just for the kingdom's survival but for his own sense of honor and justice. The sun set over the capital of Olumo, casting long shadows over the royal palace as the rival faction's army closed in. The once bustling city had transformed into a fortress on high alert, its streets eerily silent save for the clinking of armor and the murmurs of anxious soldiers. The rival faction, led by Mr. Abraham, had mobilized a formidable force, encircling the palace with a siege that threatened to bring the Grand Kingdom to its knees. Inside the palace walls, tension crackled like static in the air. Prince Femi, Fatumeta, and King Tofa convened in the war room, surrounded by maps and flickering lanterns. The siege was not just a military assault, it was a test of their unity and resolve. Femi's face was etched with determination, but his heart raced with the weight of leadership and the fear of losing everything he held dear. Fatumeta's gaze was unwavering, though her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a protective amulet, a symbol of her hope and strength. As the rival forces commenced their assault, massive catapults launched flaming projectiles over the walls, setting parts of the palace on fire. The defenders scrambled to put out the flames and reinforce the weakened battlements. The roar of the enemy and the clanging of weapons reverberated through the palace grounds, creating a cacophony of chaos. The first wave of attackers breached the outer defenses, storming into the palace grounds. Femi, donning his armor, led the charge to repel the intruders. His bravery inspired the soldiers, but the situation was dire. Each step forward felt like wading through a sea of uncertainty. As he fought alongside his troops, he saw familiar faces among the attackers, realizing that some of them were former allies swayed by Mr. Abraham's promises. A critical moment arrived when the palace's primary gate, which had withstood countless assaults, was breached by a surprise underground tunnel. The rival factions' forces surged through the gap, threatening to overrun the palace's inner sanctum. Panic spread as the royal guards fought fiercely to hold their ground. In the midst of the chaos, a dramatic twist emerged. Prince Femi discovered a secret chamber beneath the palace, a hidden refuge that had been built centuries ago, unbeknownst to most of the royal family. Inside, he found ancient weaponry and strategic documents that could potentially turn the tide of the battle. The chamber was guarded by a loyal but mysterious old soldier who revealed that he had been waiting for this moment for years, prepared to help reclaim the kingdom's honor. The discovery provided a glimmer of hope. Femi and Fatumita quickly devised a plan to use the ancient weaponry and the hidden passages to launch a counteroffensive. They led a daring nighttime raid, catching the rival forces off guard. The surprise attack, fueled by Femi's newfound strategy and the palace's hidden arsenal, began to shift the momentum of the battle. Just as victory seemed within reach, another twist unfolded. Mr. Abraham himself appeared on the battlefield, challenging King Topher to a duel. The duel was more than a personal grudge, it was a symbolic showdown that would determine the fate of the kingdom. As Femi and Fatumita fought valiantly to protect their home, they were haunted by the sight of their beloved city under siege. The battle continued through the night, each clash of steel echoing the kingdom's struggle for survival. The heart of the battle, as dawn approached, the true test of courage, strategy, and sacrifice unfolded, making every moment crucial and every decision a potential turning point in the fight for the kingdom's future. As the siege on Olumo raged on, the palace became a battleground of not just physical conflict but also of moral and emotional turmoil. The once grand corridors now echoed with the clamor of battle and the cries of the wounded. Amid this chaos, Prince Femi was confronted with a gut-wrenching dilemma that would define his legacy: save his father, King Topher, or secure the kingdom's future. Femi had fought valiantly through the night, coordinating a counteroffensive with Fatumita and rallying his troops. As dawn approached, a sudden and unexpected turn of events unfolded. Mr. Abraham, seeking to deal a final blow to the royal family, captured King Topher during the chaos. Seye, with a cold and calculating gaze, offered Femi a horrific ultimatum: surrender the palace and the throne, or watch his father be executed. The revelation was a devastating blow to Femi. He had always respected his father, despite the complexities of their relationship. Yet, he knew that the fate of Olumo rested on this very moment. The palace was on the brink of being overrun, and Seye's forces were closing in. As Femi wrestled with his decision, he was haunted by the sight of his father, bound and surrounded by Seye's men, and the sound of the kingdom's last defenses faltering. Femi's heart ached with the weight of duty and familiar love. Fatumita, seeing the internal struggle in her son's eyes, offered him a solemn choice, one she knew would break him.